drill bit. You have to chuck these right on. Folks, I hadn't planned on making today's video about do-it-yourself power stations. That was not my intent. So, first of all, welcome back to the channel. Eric the Old Jarhead here. And I'm happy you're here today because I'm going to show you something that, well, might surprise you. It's in this box, and of course you're thinking, big deal, it's a battery. You're gonna, don't do that. You're gonna want to see this battery, folks. But let's talk about do-it-yourself portable power stations first, because I've had a thought about how a person could make a fairly inexpensive power station fairly easily without a lot of know-how, and it would actually work, I think, pretty well. Frankly, I just proved it. Now, what I was doing, I wasn't actually doing some carpentry that I needed to do. I was trying to drain this battery down, folks. In fact, I'm going to show you some footage of me running around in a canoe with a trolling motor. And I spent about an hour on the water just to see how everything would go. It's a new setup for me, so it wasn't just me testing a battery. Frankly, it was me testing a cool canoe trailer setup and driving 40 miles away with it and then getting it out on the water and trying out the new trolling motor and everything. And I've got some changes I need to make with that, but it really didn't do anything to the battery. And I thought, okay, I don't happen to have a test running right now where I can use my portable refrigerator, which was a good test, I think. So what can I do to wear this battery out? What can I do to push this battery? And I thought, well, big, powerful drill. But you know what? It ran fine off of this. So what have I got here? Well, I'll tell you. This is an Ames 2500 watt inverter. It has a 5,000 watt surge, and this is not a pure sine wave inverter. This is modified sine wave. Now, if you know anything about inverters, and actually if you don't, stick around because I'm going to explain it. There are really 3 or 4 types of inverters. You only hear about 2, modified sine wave and pure sine wave. But the truth is, pure sine wave inverters are more often than not modified sine or one step up from modified sine wave. You could call them modified plus. They're really not true pure sine wave inverters. Usually those are your more expensive industrial type inverters, right? Your small power stations, those kind of things, your inverters, especially the less expensive ones, they're modified sine. They might be modified plus, but they're modified. So basically what you have is you've got square wave. It's not even modified sine wave, though they used to call it that, or some guys would call modified sine wave square wave. And then you have kind of 2-stage square wave, which is what they call modified sine wave, which is a little more of a sine wave in the electrical pattern. Then you have a 3-way or 3-stage modified sine wave, which is most often called pure sine wave, and then you have true pure sine wave. So when you're looking at inverters, if you buy a $200 inverter, it's going to be modified or square wave. I don't care what it says on it. If it says pure sine wave, it's probably just 3-stage modified sine wave that looks pretty close to pure sine wave. If you buy a $1,000 inverter, you're probably buying a pure sine wave inverter. That's kind of the rule of thumb I use. Now, I have seen some oscope testing, that's an oscilloscope, on pure sine wave inverters, and they have beautiful sine wave patterns. So they're absolutely out there. In fact, a less expensive power station that I'm testing right now has about a pure sine wave as you can see on an oscope. So when it says pure sine wave, that one must be. And it seems like true pure sine wave inverters are coming down in price. Now this inverter would go really cheap. Well, I don't know. I think they're probably still $200, but it's a heavy duty modified sine wave inverter. It's an Ames power inverter, and Ames has a reputation for making good, strong inverters, and this one, folks, is 14 years old. And I just showed you that it works fine, and it's been sitting since 2013. Late 2013. So almost 2014. It sat for those 11 years, doing nothing, collecting dust. But guess what? It worked fine. And I guess the idea of creating a do-it-yourself, kind of a simple do-it-yourself power station came when I was using this box and talking to a friend of mine. Now this is a marine battery box. This is made for you to put the battery for your trawling motor or whatever in your boat, your kayak, your canoe, your little 9-foot aluminum boat, whatever, or whatever boat you want to use it in. That's what this is designed for. You put in a Group 27 battery, and in fact, this battery, which is more like a Group 32 from what I understand, this battery, which is a 100 amp hour LiFePo4 battery, and folks, in fact, you've seen it before. You want to see this one though, trust me. Now, this guy here, this little box, I'll drop a link down below. It's on Amazon. They're like 65 bucks or something like that. They're not expensive, but it's what gave me the idea. And I know lots of guys are out there building these little do-it-yourself portable power stations. I was talking to a friend of mine and he was saying, hey, how could I just use a battery and have some power when I go camping? Charge up a phone, charge up my radios, whatever, and be able to do that when my Jeep's not running. So I said, well, hey, why don't you get one of these? These have breakers built into them, right? So you got some overprotection. It's got a little test light that'll tell you how your battery's doing. So pretty simple. It's got a 12-volt cigarette plug-in on one side, and it's got a USB plug-in on the other side. So you could plug in 12-volt power items either through the USB side or through the cigarette lighter side. You'd be good to go. You do have outside positive and negative connections to hook something up. And folks, I mean, if you didn't need a lot of power, this is a modified sine wave inverter. It's only 200 watts. I've never actually used it. But I could literally take this, open this guy up, stick this on the side. I can hear the fan running. I got a green light right here, no fault. Okay, so in theory, you could take something small like this if you didn't need a lot of 120 volt power, and you could screw that to the side of the box like this, or you could take a bigger inverter like this one that's capable of peaking at 5,000 watts, which, come on folks, you'd have to buy the big Bluettis, Jackeries, the big 2000s. You'd have to buy one of those to get a 2,000 watt inverter that would peak at 5,000 watts. And I'm not even sure they would, right? So you could take this inverter and you could probably mount this somewhere on this box, maybe underneath it, upside down. I mean, it's got mounting tabs here. You probably could do that. You maybe could mount it on the side, and frankly, with a little bit, you'd have to have a stronger strap, but then you'd have 120 volt power that would last you as long as your battery would. And if you've got one of these 100 amp hour batteries, that's 1,580 watt hours. So your typical 2000 Bluetti or Jackery has at most 2,000 watt hours. So you now have a pretty inexpensive do-it-yourself power station. You don't have to go buy the most expensive power stations out there. Now, this is a $65 box. One of those is about $200, and a 100 amp hour battery is $200 to $250. So let's say you buy a $250 battery, and I'm going to show you why you might want to. And you buy this, so that's $315, $515. Call it $550, and you've got a 2,000 watt power station. Now, it's not pure sine wave, but I'll bet you that we could find online some pure sine wave 1,000 or 2,000 watt inverters that you probably could put on the side of this box. Now, they may not be the big AIM style, which I personally like those big, heavy inverters because they last forever. But you could get a fairly inexpensive one, and God forbid something happened to it down the road, frankly, you literally could just replace it. Maybe with a better one when you could afford it. And I will drop down below a link to all these components that you could use to build your own do-it-yourself power station. Now, let's talk about what's inside here. I'm going to show you this because it's ridiculous. Folks, it really is. I wanted a 100 amp hour battery to put with my small power station to double or triple its capacity, and it worked brilliantly. I love it. I'll drop a link to that video down below where I ran my Smittybilt refrigerator for like 5 days off of that setup. So why then did I accept this battery to test? Because I've turned batteries down, folks. I literally have turned them down. Having said all that, I'll shut up and show you why I decided to review this guy. So you're going to want to see this. And you know, folks, oh, look at that. There we go. Turn it off. So let me show you this thing. This is crazy, folks. I think you're going to be like, what the heck, Eric? I think this is the future of lithium batteries. I really do. Where's my screwdriver? Let me get my screwdriver. All right, screwdriver in hand. Let me, I don't want you to see this just yet. There we go. Or I'm hiding this for a reason. I'm hoping I'm doing a good job. I think because it's going to surprise you. I really do. And this is the only reason why I agreed to do this thing. Because I'm going to be honest with you, folks. You're like, wait, what the heck is that? Folks, unless you've got specialized equipment, actually trying to test a battery, and yes, you're seeing it now, aren't you? Drop your comments down below. Tell me, you see what I'm talking about? This is a Group 27 box. It'll fit a Group 32 battery. Folks, this is a 100 amp hour, 1280 watt hour, 12.8 volt LiFePo4 battery. And folks, this is small. I'm going to show you how small this is. So, clearly, what I just pulled out in front of you, which fits in a Group 27 box, that's kind of maybe a Group 32. Look at the difference. I don't know if you can see that very well, but look at this. Is this crazy? Folks, that's my hand width smaller than this guy. This literally is that much smaller. Look. Let me switch to the other side so you can see. That's small, folks. Look at the size. Same capacity between both of these batteries. And this, folks, this is the Golden Mate that I reviewed before. So I like this battery. Don't get me wrong. That's a good battery. But, folks, look at this. 1,580 watt hours, 100 amp hours, 10.6 volt discharge cutoff, so it has a BMS. Max charge voltage 14.4 volt. Max series voltage 48, so you can run 4 of these in series. Max continuous current 120 amps. I want to say this guy here was 100 amps. 100 amps. 100 amps, 120 amps. Okay, peak discharge current 300 amps for 5 seconds and temperature range of -4 to 140. Now, this is a LiFePo4 battery, and you should be able to get 4,000 cycles at 90%, 5,000 at 80%, with a potential for up to 15,000 cycles. This battery will last a very, very long time, folks. Now, how do you get 15,000 cycles? Well, frankly, you only use 20 or 30% of the battery. Now, do-it-yourself power systems. Do you need that box? No, but it does provide you with a little 12-volt setup, right? And you can use one of these guys, which look at the difference in size here, folks. that thing has completely disappeared. I mean, I can't stress enough how small this guy is. It weighs about the same. I think the weight is very close. I will look it up and I will put it down for you. And I'm going to put a link down below for this battery. Full disclosure, CYCLENBATT did send me this battery for me to review. So I didn't pay for it. And I know that sometimes guys will say, you know, oh, well, you didn't pay for it. So of course you're going to give it a good review. No. But I'm going to tell you right now, full disclosure, I didn't have the means. Okay, hold up here. Let's be honest. We all have the means to drain one of these batteries down. What I probably should have said here is I just didn't have the creativity at the time. I did take this battery out and run it with my little Newport, 35-pound thrust motor on my canoe, and I ran it around for an hour, and it didn't even dent the battery. And I suppose I could have run, like our refrigerator or something else off of it with an inverter. However, I thought, well, I'll just run some tools on it and see how I could drain it down with those tools. And frankly, it just didn't drain down. So, you know, my channel's not really about tearing batteries apart and finding out just how many amp hours they really do have or whatever. But with that in mind, let's keep going here. To completely drain this battery down to zero and test if you really get 1580 watt hours. Even when I did my test on my Golden battery, I ran it for 5 days. I did some approximate testing, but without the right testing, come on, you can't do that. So what I can do though is I can check voltages. And I do have a chart that allows me to see what my voltages test at. Now this is an old multimeter that is pretty beat up, but it does still work. So I got 13.6 and that is 100%. I just use a 1/2 inch high torque drill running off a 2500 watt inverter to cut a tenon. And you know, I use the old ancient, like 30-year-old drill. Folks, let me show you this with a paddle bit. I used this old Black & Decker 13 millimeter variable speed reversing drill. This is 120 volts, 60 hertz, 3 amps. So that's not a lot of power. What's that? 3 amps would be 360 watts. So I guess this doesn't really use a lot of power, but it seemed to me like it actually drew a little more than that. So it might have only drawn for 500 watts. But then with that big old paddle bit, it's still, now it's not a huge one, that's a 7/16, but frankly, I mean, it had the grunt to do it. And I ran my jigsaw. And, you know, you know, all right, let's see what we got here. So this jigsaw, this is 6 amps. So what's that? 720, I think. Not a huge draw, but nonetheless, we still used it. All right, so that was what, 732. That was the math on that one. This one here is over 1,000 watts. 1,080 according to this, it's a 9 amp. So you're pulling over 1,000 watts, okay? So we ran 400 approximately, 700 and 1,000 watts. We didn't run them for a long time, but let's be honest, a 1,500 watt hour battery should be able to run this for an hour and a half. I mean, that's assuming that the BMS doesn't cut it off before it gets to zero. But even then, it's a 1,580, so 1,500, hour and a half. That it should be able to run this. Well, folks, I'm gonna tell you right now, I think this little battery is worth it. When you're overlanding, then space is important to you. You're trying to pack all of your camping gear in a Jeep that you're gonna go live out of for anywhere from 2 or 3 days to a week, or for some people, even longer. For me, if I'm going longer, I'm probably going to go in my camper and pull the Jeep. But if I go on short trips, your space is a premium. And in the canoe, space is a premium there. Now with this battery, unlike the big one, with this one, I was able to stick my wallet and my phone in the battery box, in the foam, with this. And I could have put it in a Ziploc, stuffed it in there, and it would have been just fine even if we capsized. I got all this extra room. So there's plenty of extra room in there. Now, could you make a portable power station with it? Well, sure, I showed you that inverter up there, right? You could take that and actually put that inverter inside of that box if you wanted to. You could make it so that you could set it inside with this battery and have maybe you know, a connection coming outside to a couple plugs or something, with GFCIs or something on the outside of the box, or you could just mount it directly on the outside of the box. And again, I'll drop some links down below with, you know, a 1,000 watt inverter, a 2,000 watt inverter that you could get that maybe aren't quite that expensive, that will be pure sine wave. And to this battery in particular, because I think if you're gonna make your own power station, you need at least one of these, right? You could use the bigger batteries. These are a little lighter, definitely smaller, which means a lot more room to make your small power station small, because that's the point. You want it to be small. So anyway, folks, there you have it. Thank you, CYCLENBATT, for sending me this to review it. I was not able to push it hard enough to drain the battery. I tried, I did. But 1,580 watt hours is quite a bit of power, folks. I should be able to run a refrigerator off this for quite a while. It's a sweet little battery, folks. And carrying this into a cabin out in the woods, hell of a lot easier than carrying these bigger batteries. So go down and hit that link below, check it out. Thanks for watching, folks. I really do appreciate it. And I'll drop another video right here for you to check out. Y'all have a great day. The old Jarhead out. That's a wrap.